Hi, and welcome to Blue Square Security, hosted by the Microsoft Digital Security Specialist team, a podcast dedicated to cybersecurity with guests from all over the industry, both inside and outside Microsoft, to bring you as many perspectives as possible.
Just kind of having a hard time seeing above the waves, right? Seeing the horizon to think what's next because they're constantly putting out fires, right? And, I kind of liken that environment to, you're doing 90 miles an hour and all of a sudden you get two blowouts on the highway, but you still got to go 90 miles an hour. How do you change those tires, right?
Good afternoon, and welcome to Blue Square Security, hosted by the Microsoft Digital Security Specialist team. This is episode 2, where we interview the COO, Byron Braun of Cloud & Wire. We're going to cover topics that relate more to his business, which is a technology brokerage agency. But we're going to discuss things from high-level technology topics and solutions, with a little bit of focus on telecommunications, moving data and infrastructure to the cloud, going all the way back and discussing some legacy technologies and how a lot of his clients are struggling with moving those legacy technologies to an updated, modern solution, which is typically using cloud infrastructure. We're going to talk about the value of utilizing an MSP and the value that they bring from virtual CIOs, putting out fires, mergers and acquisitions, security, IT, and audits. And then a big part of the conversation is staffing, keeping talent. What does that look like? And then obviously we're going to be talking about the threats that are being faced from the state actors and what a zero trust approach looks like. But without further ado, here is our conversation with COO of Cloud & Wire, Byron Braun. All right, so thanks for joining us. We are joined here with Byron Braun, the COO of Cloud & Wire. Byron and I go back a number of years. I think it's probably 10 to 15 years now. So Byron and I have known each other for quite a while. Just by way of getting an introduction started, give us a quick rundown of who Cloud & Wire is, who you guys serve, your title as COO. What does that mean for Cloud & Wire? What does that mean when you meet customers? And just kind of give us your quick story.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here, guys. Greg, good to see you again, as always. Yeah, so Cloud & Wire, we are a technology brokerage agency. We tend to focus on telecommunications. That industry has kind of morphed over the years more into providing solutions now. Oftentimes it's, we're involved in moving from a legacy infrastructure to a virtual infrastructure around phone systems, contact centers, and providing the networks that support those types of cloud-based services. And usually, that involves data, moving infrastructure out to the cloud as well. We represent and have access to over 400 solution providers in our little breadbasket and of partners that we are able to bring to the table. And what that allows us to do is really be hyper focused on our customers' needs, really help represent them in the marketplace and educate them on what's happening in their industry as far as procurement and consuming and using technology in their business, and make sure they're putting the pieces together in the right manner. I liken a technology strategy to building a house. You've got to have a blueprint first, right? You've got to lay the foundation in order to kind of roll out phase 2. You just can't jump out into a cloud-based architecture without considering the pathways to get there and what's going to support that and how your users consume that. And obviously one of those components is security. Both at the user level all the way out to the cloud level. And so, our goal is to really help shine a light on those corners that, not a lot of customers may think about. If they do have internal IT, those guys are usually very taxed. They're a jack of all trades. And so we really try to come in and complement them, educate them, and, make sure that they understand the journey that they're about to embark on. And as a result of that, we help bring best of breed solution providers to the table and help them evaluate that. And ultimately go through procurement and help see it through and get it installed and up and running. So that's what I do every day. I love it. I love educating customers, and I love helping them see the end result of the effort and their vision that they've got for their business. So yeah, my role as COO, I really take part in the day to day. I'm responsible for sales and sales operations. I wear multiple hats, obviously, in the organization.
You wouldn't be in technology if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes I play solution architect or solution engineer. My background and subject matter expertise is telecommunications. I've been at it for, probably 17 years now. Procured services all over the world. But I also have a stable of agnostic solution architects and engineers to help me with those in-depth discussions. I have a saying: I can't be the chef and the server at the same time, right? So, depending on the client engagement, my goal is to work with C-level, help them realize the gains and benefits and obviously ROI. Of what they're trying to gain once all these things are accomplished. And I often talk about technology as a hammer and a nail, right? It's for a C-level, it doesn't matter. A guy can build a deck with a hammer and nails, or he can build you a house, right, with hammer and nails. So as far as my day to day, it's really the sales operations, implementation, making sure that those touch points with the customer kind of, are keeping up with things. Making sure what translates from, orders into procurement, into billing, are all the same thing, right? Oftentimes, we're looking at contracts for our customers, making sure they're getting billed the right amount, making sure, prorated bills are accounted for, tracking contract dates, expiration dates, right? So,
Is that something you guys do kind of out of the box? Is that a standard offering and service to your clients, or is that morphed over especially right now with
sure.
the economic downturn, to use
Yeah.
that term? It seems like that'd be very useful and needed right now.
Yeah, so more often or not, I'm tracking that stuff when we first engage with customers, right? Because all these things are impending events, and worst thing you can do is miss an impending event, and then you're locked into another technology contract for 36 months, right? Which, you know, why, right? You're looking to make changes anyway, and so that's the administrative aspect of kind of what we do. Um, I'm more or less, I look at shining a light on it, right? Guys, here's things that you should be tracking for your business. This is no different than any other utility, insurance, anything like that, right? You're going to want to look at your rates. You're going to want to look at, how the needs of the business every contract cycle. And if they're not tracking that, then we help them gather that data and build that knowledge base in-house. I'll give you a perfect example. One of my clients, you mentioned, I the verticals that I like to work in, one of them is commercial real estate. So I've got a client that they're a REIT, and one of their portfolios is senior living. So they've got some unique circumstances, right? Both from an administrative perspective, compliance perspective, lots of different things. They're buying and selling properties, and they have a kind of hard time tracking all these different things when they're either acquiring a property or they're selling a property. And so one of the processes that we put in place is, as they're acquiring a property, I work with their managed service provider who's here locally in Atlanta, although they're a national provider. I have my own resources I send on site that meets their managed service provider on site, and we're going and gathering all the data that we can on their telecommunications infrastructure. So we're taking bill copies, we're gathering contracts, we're matching those contracts up with circuit IDs and services in the telecommunications closet. We're building a workbook both for local as well as the IT company, their managed service provider, as well as corporate IT, right? And so those two workbooks get combined, and now we've got a clear picture of where this property stands from a technology perspective. And there's some
Your website says virtual CIO is one of your offerings.
Sure.
I'm assuming that's kind of the role
That's a
of
perfect
gathering
example.
that. Yeah. So what
Yes.
type of company, whether it's vertical based or size based, what type of company makes use of a virtual CIO?
Sure. Yeah. Usually, kind of mid market to enterprise, right? We've got limited resources. We've got lots of locations. There could be turnover. There could be acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions going on. You traditionally might have a tier one, tier two in-house that is becoming very taxed with certain mundane tasks. Um, very operational heavy, as far as that aspect, right? And it's just kind of having a hard time seeing above the waves, right? Seeing the horizon to think what's next because they're constantly putting out fires, right? And I kind of liken that environment to, you're doing 90 miles an hour and all of a sudden you get two blowouts on the highway, but you still got to go 90 miles an hour. How do you change those tires, right? How are you ever going to trade that car in and get a new car, right? Because you still got to be heading 90 miles an hour down the highway. The business doesn't stop, right? And so to me, that's a perfect use case. um, I look for companies that have impending events around mergers and acquisitions, right? Specific industries per se that might have compliance initiatives, things like that. I will share, my business is 100% referral based. Everything I do is referral based. So, I'm usually being brought in to complement another partner and or solve a specific problem. And I'm the classic land and expand type of individual, right? Um, I can give you an example of a client that we're going through right now that um, again, growing by mergers and acquisition. They're looking at moving stuff out to the cloud. They've got tier one help desk that, 60% of what they're doing is kind of auditing network outages and taking trouble tickets and password resets. And so we're having conversations with them around, okay, why don't we standardize on a provider? Right. And we can still have that provider provide primary and secondary circuits for you. Right. So now you go from having two different contracts to one contract. Right. And we can still build a diverse network. Why don't we have that provider layer on an SD-WAN solution, right? So now that they can start proactively bringing and auto ticketing and monitoring those circuits on your behalf, because now that's a manual process, and you guys, manage your own hardware on site, and you're dispatching your own guys to fly out and replace gear, right? So for 375, my guys will go out and install everything. And guess what? They're going to auto ticket before the folks at home, the folks at corporate even know there's an outage, right? So now you're starting to pivot and push some of that stuff off on a provider that they're just going to do that anyway as part of their monthly service, that now we can start layering on other services and start freeing up in-house IT to start being more strategic and start having conversations around, why are we managing servers anymore? Why aren't we doing data backups? Why aren't we, why do we have this application replicating on a server at corporate office and we're managing VPNs for all these remote users, right? All that stuff creates waste. And that's why, IT gets all bogged down. So these are the things that I look for. And, the market's just kind of pivoted to try to take over some of that burden. And now IT can start thinking more strategically. And, IT needs to be a profit center for a business, not a cost center, right? And so that's what I try to focus on. I don't care how it's done. That's the conversation I want to have, though, right? That's level of strategic type of conversation, um, to be able to focus on what's important to the business, whether it's analytics, whether it's the data, whether it's just operational, whatever that might be for the business. And let's build towards that and build a strategy towards that.
So Byron, on coming from the sales side, that is a big value prop, right? Is
Sure.
Free up, let them concentrate on bigger picture for needs of the business. Whether it's IT, especially in security, there's
Sure.
all the shortage of expertise, right?
Oh,
Guys,
100%.
hats, and then they kind of get caught into the whirlwind of this is the way we do things, and then there's a little bit of friction when it's time for change.
Sure,
How does that play into your sales cycles?
sure. So I'm not talking to the guys that create friction.
Right.
I'm just not going to. Right. I mean, I don't want to talk to a director of IT. I don't want to talk to a IT manager. I want to talk to the COO, Chief Revenue Officer, CIO, COO, or CEO, right?
Yeah.
And you are spot on, right? A lot of times, legacy IT, they're hardware focused. They build their fiefdom, and anybody that messes with that,
It's their baby.
beware, right? And so here's what I say. Your guys down there in IT, right? There might be 4 of them. Do they take breaks? Do they take vacations? Do they have families? Do they have kids? Okay. Yes, 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 and yes, right?
Yeah.
What happens if one of them gets hit by a truck, right? What happens if there's a breach and he's on vacation, right? So unless and I mean, you look at any multi-billion-dollar business, it is cost prohibitive for them to build a full cybersecurity technology strategy. They just can't do it. There's not enough talent in the marketplace. There's not enough money in the pocketbook. They can't support enough people to go support. It's impossible. It's an impossibility to go hire experts in everything that a business needs to cover all those bases. Good gracious, right? What's your average CSSP go for? $250,000. And guess what? If he's any good, he's getting recruited 14 months later, right?
Yeah.
And you've got all these specialties now and all these compliances and all these different pressures on these different businesses now, right? And how do you keep track of all that? How do you run audits? How do you know that you're even making progress towards any sort of compliance and measure that in preparation for an audit, right? I mean, these are all things that businesses face, right? And so for me, I ask that question, how does any business afford that? How are you going to retain talent? You can't. It's an impossibility. And I would argue and challenge anybody to find a business out there that can do it and doesn't have any gaps through an audit. There is none. I mean, there just isn't.
We were on call earlier. They said the same thing.
Yeah.
Just because you're not aware of it, and if you're not actively investing or
No.
strategic, you're still paying the cost.
And guess who your enemy is? State actors, China, Russia, right? Like you are fighting literal countries that want access to your intellectual property. And unless you're got 10,000 people at your disposal building bots and AI and all this to defend you, that's what you're up against, right? And so, when I have these, that's the conversation I'm having, right? Well, how do you solve it? Well, you've got to have a cohesive, strategic, plan to go solve this, and you've got to have a multitude of either partners or a few partners that work these spaces, right? To be able to support your business. And I can I share a screen real quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
I want to share a screen because when I talk to a customer, someone else put this together. I found this off something. I was at a cybersecurity conference a couple years ago, and this is a good visual that I share with clients that I feel makes sense, right? Is this all encompassing? Probably not. Can you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we got it.
So, it's kind of the outside in approach, right? And I mean, this is what you need at a basic core cyber strategy.
And just for somebody that may not be able to view this, Spotify and such, you've got layers 1 through 10, starting with, inside out approach. Number 1 being data loss prevention or DLP, going all the way out to number 10 being your perimeter and your firewalls and your email security and the VPN. So just to paint a picture of what that graphic looks like.
So most people are doing a portion of this, right? They definitely have number 10 covered, a little bit of number 7, 6, maybe some 5, right? You start getting into all this other stuff, right? That's really, really hard to keep up with. I mean, you've got to have specialists, right?
A big thing for us here at Microsoft, right? We're talking about a zero trust strategy in each one of these.
Absolutely. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. And so if you're not having the conversation, there are gaps. No doubt about it.
Right.
Right? It just takes, Wanda in accounting getting a text to reset a password, thinking it's from IT, and she goes in and resets a password, and boom, her mobile device, and now the whole network is down, right? And someone's got access to it. They may not be accessing it now, but they have a backdoor into it, right? I mean, that happens all day. I think phishing is probably one of the biggest vulnerabilities, and that's a basic level thing, right? Do you spot check your people for these types of vulnerabilities that are just obvious things, right?
Yeah, email remains the number one threat vector.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, for me, I'm not even versed. I don't deal with this stuff enough to even be well versed enough in the latest terminology about all this stuff. Again, I try to paint the picture of where the vulnerabilities are for the client and let them tell me where they need help. And then we try to start spot checking and, patching those holes immediately. But hopefully that leads to a deeper engagement and, a deeper conversation around, hey, look, we need to take a step back here and holistically think about our strategy, right?
Yeah, the more you explain this and the more I listen to the way you describe it, the more I feel for the CISOs that are out there, because I mean, they're the strategy developer, right? I mean, they're thinking strategy at all times, and they're kind of putting the playbook in front of the right people, the right talent.
Mm-hmm.
But as I look through and I think about what you've been discussing, if you're in the day to day, thinking about strategy is very difficult because you do have so many things coming at you at all times, and
Right.
that's not unique to manufacturing or oil and gas. I mean, that's just business in general. You've got so
Sure.
many things coming at you from so many different directions that, yes, there's probably a best practice for your role put in place. But when reality sits in, you're going to get distracted from your day to day because you've got some kind of, a fire to put out, some ringing bell. So, yeah, I mean, just looking at this and listening to the concept itself, it makes me feel for the CISOs that are out there, because that's going to be a very
Well,
difficult implementation.
and so even take that a step further, Greg. Right. So got a client we've done a little bit of work for. We've had some strategic discussions with them. Very large hospitality organization into gaming, hotels, lots and lots of properties. If I'm a C-level and I go hire a CISO or, to help me with my organization, right? How long does it take that guy to get it to get that new hire grounded, get him on his feet, right? Before he actually has a snapshot of the business, has an idea of how to get that, even just a high level strategy, right? To get, the best, that's 6 months, right? To even have enough of a snapshot, get your feet wet, understand the business, talk to your guys, and get something on a whiteboard of, okay, here's the priorities. Here might be phase 2.
And then throw in there the reality of the things that changed during that 6 months.
Well, not only that, but who's going to help me with this, right? So now you're 9 months in, right? So you think that guy's getting recruited at 9 months?
Well, I know his board is wanting results at 9 months.
I'm just saying there's such a shortage in the industry. That guy's getting recruited. I mean, you look up the average life cycle of a CISO. What is it? 16 months, 18 months, 20 months? Does that warrant any new hire any amount of time to get their feet wet, develop a strategy, develop a plan, even look at who's going to help me with this from a solution provider perspective and even start implementing it? I would say no.
No, yeah. I mean, we even sat on a call today, the three of us, where they were talking about, they said it was a statistic of 2 to 1 for every 2 cybersecurity jobs that are filled, one sits empty. I mean, that's
So
a staggering
think of what
statistic.
that means in the market and for the business. You cannot develop a strategy with that model. If you're a large enterprise organization, you're still rolling the dice. You might as well not hire anybody and just go around blind, because that's the same strategy. So you have to partner, and you have to find, I don't even call solution providers, a solution partner to help you with that strategy, and also build the strategy of solution providers that can develop the ecosystem that I just showed you, because nobody is a jack of all trades, right?
Yeah.
So true.
So, inevitably there's gaps everywhere. So you need a SIEM, SIEM service, right? You need monitoring, you need this, you need that. So now, right, I mean, IT gets shifted now, and again, this is the strategic shift from being wrench turners to now being relationship builders, right? And these partners need to be collaborative folks that are involved in the internal conversations as part of the team, if we all agree that they're the right partner, right? So you're essentially outsourcing, those components of your business to best in breed in the marketplace that have their own SLAs, have their own infrastructure. So you're not absorbing that cost as a business. You're not on, how do you develop, right? You're going to develop your own SLA for the business internally. Like, that doesn't make sense, because you don't have the budget to go build that strategy.
Right.
So you're going to take that to the board. So if you think about the alternative of, hey, now I can be strategic, I can be high level vendor management, I can free myself up to, to really be the C-level guy and help paint the picture for the board and for the business and the vision for the business, and leverage best of breed in the marketplace that have already built this, that already have the people and assets and infrastructure and SLAs in place. So now I'm shifting. And again, this just becomes an operating cost of the cost of doing business now, right?
Yeah.
It should be no different than an electrical bill. You've got to have electricity, you got to have water, you got to have phones, you got to have internet, you got to have,
Yeah.
So that's, I'm getting really high level. I mean,
I love
that's
that
the
idea.
conversation. That's
Yeah.
the big idea, right? And so businesses don't understand that. But when you start looking at the numbers and at the gap, so if, Greg, you're saying there's a 2 to 1 gap. Okay, so what's the alternative? Oh, we just sit on our hands, or are we going to hire somebody at $250,000 and roll the dice when he's going to leave in 18 months anyway, and we're back in the same position, right? So it's kind of a catch-22.
Oh yeah.
But whether that's a new person internally or you're jumping MSPs, if you don't have somebody quarterbacking that for you, all those strategies change just a little bit to throw you off.
Well, and just think about that, though. Think about what you said, the new person that might come up internally, right?
Yep.
Those guys are just IT directors, IT managers that moved up the ranks and they've been there the longest. But are they really the right guys? Do they
Yeah.
really
Finding
have
a
the right
strategic
background?
thinker, they're a different breed. I mean,
Right.
they're hard to come by, and when you find them, you get into that situation that you've
He
talked
may
about.
know
They
the
get recruited.
business, may be a great guy, great person, right? Loyal. Yeah, that might, but are they the right guy to develop the strategy, right?
Yeah.
To see the gaps. Do they have the experience in this to understand the business, right? Maybe
And
they
see it
did
from
50.
different aspects too. It's not just
Absolutely.
security, it's not just technology,
Yeah.
it's business and monetary and operational and such.
I mean, one of the biggest things that I see, and this, again, I deal a lot in legacy technologies, the oldest technology out there, analog POTS lines, right? Old as Morse code. And I have customers, I ran across a customer the other day that was paying between $565 and $1,100 per analog line. And market rates are $65 a line. And they've been doing it for years, right? Same thing happens here. It's the same concept, right? And so to your point, Greg, that business discussion does need to be a part of it, because it's the cost of doing business. But you also don't need to pay 20 times market rates for it, right? That's where guys like me come into place, because guess what? We can talk to 10 different partners, and we can build, we can build your ice cream sundae or whatever, right? You can have the nuts, you can have the cherry on top. Oh, we don't want cherry on top. We want to do that in-house. No problem, right? Our guys want read-write access. We got a guy on staff that's a developer. Okay, no problem, right? He'll develop the APIs into your software to be able to do X, Y, Z, right? They'll be responsible for that. So that's where those types of things come into play. But anyway, that's not to jump off my high horse. That's just what that's just my holistic view that I've developed over the years, just by talking to so many different customers. I mean, from legal to medical, banking, credit unions, hospitality. I've got real estate customers that, not only do they deal with the real estate process and transaction, but they're dealing with all the medical stuff too, right? Because of the type of REIT that they are. So, every business is a little bit different.
So that wraps up episode 2 with COO of Cloud and Wire, Byron Braun. Please be sure to check out part 2 of our conversation with Byron, where we talk a little bit more about cloud journeys, and not just Microsoft. We're talking which of his customers are Microsoft shops, which are Google shops, which are AWS shops. But then we get into Teams Voice, Azure migrations, the Microsoft security investment. And then the one that I think is extremely interesting is our conversation around AI and ChatGPT, and what somebody like Byron, who represents so many different partners, what they're seeing in the world of AI solutions being offered to his customers through that vast network of partners that he has access to. So again, thank you for listening to part 1, and hopefully you choose to tune in to part 2. Thanks so much.
Shall we play a game?